Now, whatever tonight's debate has in store for us, it is sure to go down in history as one of the most historic. Presidential debates in America have a colorful history full of gaffes, laughs, and occasional moments that defined an era. So who better to help us discuss this historic debate than presidential historian Mark Updegrove. Mark, thanks for coming on. I wanted you to put this into context for us just to start things off. How do you think we will look back on this moment in history? What's at stake in this debate?
You know, invariably, every 4 years, you hear, Diane, that this is the most important election in history. But I think in this case, it's a matter of the broken clock being right twice a day. It's right. There's no question. This is the most important election, certainly of my lifetime. You'd have to go back to the 1800s, to the eve of the Civil War, to find a more important election. And that's because of the radically different visions that these two candidates have. They stand for fundamentally different things. And in case of Donald Trump, it's a veering away from democratic norms, as he had in his presidency. And we saw that, of course, with the challenge of the 2020 election results, despite the many court cases that showed that it was a free and fair election, that the results were sound. We got January 6th. So it's a very, very different vision that these two candidates have. And there is so much at stake, not only for the future of this country, Diane, but for the future of the world, because of the way they see the United States' position in the world.
Mark, are there any other equivalent moments in history you think we can compare this debate to?
In terms of debate, yes, Diane, you have to go back to the really close elections that we've seen in the past 60 plus years, beginning with the very first debate in 1960, when Richard Nixon squared off against John F. Kennedy, 1976, where the incumbent president Gerald Ford squared off against Jimmy Carter, and in 2000, when George W. Bush was going up against Al Gore. In those cases, John F. Kennedy, Jimmy Carter, and George W. Bush won those elections respectively, and it was probably because of the performance of the debates, where they edged out their opponents. So this becomes vitally important, Diane, as voters, particularly those on the fence, look at these two candidates on an apples-to-apples, side-by-side basis.
And Mark, sometimes you think, all right, even if the person you favor doesn't win, it's just one administration, it's just 4 years. But it sounds like you're saying, given this moment in history, the consequences could be bigger than that. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
I think it's because of what Donald Trump stands for. I think if you look at Vice President Harris, you can get a pretty good idea of what her administration will look like based on what we've seen from Joe Biden, because she has served as his vice president for 4 years. You don't see a radically different version of America under the guidance of Kamala Harris versus Joe Biden. Donald Trump, it's a very different thing. And you've heard the rhetoric in recent days, some of the things that he has said. He talked yesterday about jailing those who contest the fact that the election was stolen in 2020. This is somebody who, again, has veered from democratic norms, who doesn't see America and its future in the same manner that traditional candidates have, Diane.
So, Mark, what are you watching for at tonight's debate?
I think it's very important because of the statistics you just related, Diane. It's very important for those who don't know Kamala Harris to make a very compelling presentation. We know that debates are a lot about image. We talked about that very first debate between Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy, and it really didn't boil down to substance. It boiled down to image. John F. Kennedy presented a more glamorous, more vigorous image. Richard Nixon was pasty-faced. He was sort of shifty-eyed, and that mattered because television is a visual medium. I think Kamala Harris has to show that she's assertive, that she has a commanding presence, that she's up to the task of leading America forward after the Biden administration. We know President Trump, not only because he's a very visible person in the media currently because of his candidacy, but because he was president for 4 years. So it's I think, more important for Kamala Harris than it is for Donald Trump.
All right, ABC News contributor, presidential historian Mark Updegrove. Mark, thank you.